Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church, to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Welcome back to the Gottesdienst crowd. This is Jason Braaten. Today we are taking up a topic that we've actually talked about quite a bit with Peterson and sometimes with Pastor Ramirez, but we're going to talk about it with someone who actually lived it. My guest today is Pastor Coleman Geraci. He is the pastor of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Milan, Michigan, and St. Thomas Lutheran Church in Ann Arbor. He was formerly a Green Beret, but now he serves as a chaplain in the Army Reserve as a captain. So welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, Coleman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure. Well, we're typically talking about Jocko Willink or the SEALs or something like that, but there are other special ops operators out there. And somehow Peterson got your name and this would be a great interview to talk about what your experience was as a Green Beret, what are some of the helpful disciplines and mindsets and attitudes that you learned, and then how that is translatable into the ministry. So tell me about becoming a Green Beret. What was that like?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, the process was basically a 2-year training pipeline. And I mean, it was very involved. It stretched you in a lot of different ways because it wasn't just the physical demands of being a Green Beret, but there was a lot of academic work that went into it as well. To kind of, I guess, set the groundwork for what a Green Beret is. The Green Berets are the U.S. Army Special Forces, and that is often confused with Special Operations Forces.
Okay.
The Special Forces are a subset of Special Operations. And our task as Special Forces soldiers is actually to be force multipliers and to work with indigenous forces in whatever country we're doing operations to help them basically take over for American forces. Mm-hmm. So we go in and teach and train host nation forces and equip them and make them capable to really provide defense for their own nation. Mm-hmm. This came about in the 60s with Vietnam and a lot of the working with the indigenous forces there. And it's just continued since. When I went to Iraq twice, and I was working with Iraqis that whole time. So all that is to say is that the actual mission of the Green Berets of the Special Forces is to be able to raise up leaders, or specifically military, soldiers. Raise up soldiers that can help defend their own country, so that Americans don't have to. That's one of the big things. We try to work ourselves out of a job.
So you use the term force multiplier. What is that? And what does that mean exactly?
So that's a good question. Force multiplier is meaning that what you are imparting to the people that you are training will actually increase their success, and then also that they would be able to take that and then train others.
Okay.
So that you are literally multiplying your ability to carry out operations. And so I guess there's a parallel to making disciples of all nations that,
Sure.
But so that's the idea behind it, and that you set them up to really, again, to get them to the point where they can handle things on their own. And if there's American support that's needed, it's really done in a supervisory role and not actually in engaging.
So the Green Berets differ in some ways. I know I've heard the SEALs do some of that, but they differ in the sense that that's solely your mission. Is that how I'm understanding this?
So that is our primary mission. Yes.
Okay.
There are, and we would say we do it better than the SEALs, of course.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of overlap, and this is all in the special operations community. Mm-hmm. And there are Green Beret teams that do more kind of what people would recognize as what the SEALs do, which is direct action, mm-hmm. those type of things. But really, the primary and the reason I bring that up is going back to the training. When we go through what is called the Q course, the qualification course, we spend up to 6 months learning a language to be able to communicate in our host nation forces language. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that bridges the gap, it builds credibility, and it helps to move them forward in what we want them to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And also, as we're training in all of our other small unit tactics or whatever our specific MOS, our specific military occupational service, the specific specialty, is, I guess, the best way to put it, that we have. It's to be able not only to employ them ourselves, but then to teach people to do that. So I served as a medic, and I went through an entire year of medical training for that, and it started from the ground level of we had 6 weeks of intense anatomy and physiology, and I mean we had tests on, you had to name every bone in the body, and they would, basically throw up a picture of some part of the human anatomy, and you had to identify those things that were on there. So it was this rigorous, memorization and identification that you were being tested on. And the reason was it was so that you knew it, so that you could do things, but then also when it came time to, you could teach others, hey, this is why we do what we do, and this is how you do it the proper way. So, yeah.
So communication was key, the ability to take in information and then communicate it to someone else so that they could then understand it, make use of it, and communicate it to others.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's teaching. When you think about it, just from the pastoral side, when you think about what you are doing as a pastor, especially in the preaching function and the teaching throughout Bible studies and stuff, you're actually communicating God's word so that it's not just information that sits there, but that it actually affects the people's lives. Like, This is how God wants us to be.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine there is some kind of like leadership component to your training as well?
Yes. So part of the 2 years in the training, so I'll break down the training. You enter the first phase of it is selection. And so that's a 2 week, or was 2 weeks. I don't know if they kind of monkey with the length of that selection period ever so often. So I assume it's still 2 weeks. But you're basically, the first week is kind of individual skills. Are you mentally tough enough? Can you learn what they are teaching you and then carry it out? Yeah. Then the second week focuses on teamwork, and you are put in leadership positions there. Can you demonstrate the ability to influence people and motivate them? But then also, do you have the ability to assess a problem and say, this is how we need to do it? And all the while balancing your role and using your people's the skills that your people have in that group to accomplish whatever the mission is. And most of those were like extremely taxing physical events. Moving a 500-pound sandbag, 2 kilometers.
Oh goodness!
So things like that. So that's the initial kind of entry into it. Once you get into the qualification course, then it breaks down basically into a small unit tactics, a field kind of training, that's where you really start to learn the leadership roles, because it's in those places that you have to not only, as the leader, if you're put in that position, which you will be, and you'll be evaluated on it, not only do you have to assess the problem, come up with the plan, deliver the operation order, those types of things. But if you're not in that leadership position, you have to be able to go, okay, this is what we've decided to do, and this is how we're going to carry it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you it's that kind of reciprocal relationship of, all right, when it's time to lead, I need to lead. When it's time to follow, I have to follow.
Yeah.
Even if I might disagree with the guy.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's great. So was that first week of selection the individual kind of mental and physical test? Does that translate to like what people know as like Hell Week, or do you have something different like from that?
Yes, I'm going to say yes, but I haven't been through Hell Week, so
yeah, right.
Don't know exactly. But yeah, it is. I mean, it is supposed to test you physically and mentally, because there are tasks that you have to complete. Like the biggest one in that section is land navigation, and so and that's completely individual. And you are given, here's your map, here's your points. You go out, and the people will check you off when you get to those points, and you either succeed or you don't. Mm-hmm. And that's and you're doing this. It's not only, it's like you're almost doing it 24/7. They do, you get a break time of sorts from basically midnight to 04. Or at least that was the experience that I had. But you're not, that's when you're supposed to kind of rest and refit. Mm-hmm. But, that time might be, instead of actually resting, you might be like getting all your gear together. And so you end up, only, instead of getting 3 hours of sleep, you get an hour and a half or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But that is all supposed to, that first week is supposed to break you down in the sense of, okay, now that you're exhausted, you're physically worn out because I had blisters on my feet from all the rucking around and stuff. Now, can you work with other people? That's kind of the what you're being tested on at that point is when you're pushed to your limits individually. Well, now how do you cooperate with 10 other guys that have been pushed to their limits physically as well?
Yeah.
Because and ultimately, why that's important is because there will come a time when you're deployed that you might be in that exact same situation, and you have to be able to say, okay, we're all alone out here in whatever country, and how do we get things done? Mm-hmm. And to be able to be resourceful enough, and then also to be trusting enough to go, okay, here's how we're going to accomplish this.
So thinking about those first 2 weeks, the first one, meant to challenge and exhaust both your physical and mental capabilities under that physical stress. And then moving into that teamwork where you lead and assess phase. What did you learn about yourself and that you kind of think is more broad, that appeals to all mankind? That we could all kind of walk away with in terms of I didn't see this in myself prior to this, and these are things that I know that now I need to work on. Or things like, whoa, I didn't realize I was actually capable of X, Y, and Z. Those kind of things. Does that make sense?
Yes. There was, let's see, there's a sense to me that I was too dumb to quit, but too smart to be failed. And I think that was kind of what I learned in those 2 weeks and through the remainder of the course as well.
That could describe our probably time through seminary too.
Yes.
Right? Too dumb to quit and too smart to fail.
All right. And so, yeah, I would say, well, of course, and this is also, so there's a kind of broader picture story of me.
Okay.
I grew up Lutheran, but I grew up ELCA. So,
okay.
And when I joined the Army, I was still Lutheran, but the ELCA was kind of going the way that they, have ultimately gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really struggling with that, but I knew at the core of who I was, Jesus is there for me. And, if God has called me into this, he will see me through it. And even if I fail, he's still going to utilize me, whatever. And so I had that kind of in the back of my mind. And so, there was throughout my entire Army experience, not just the selection, but it was this sense of it is going to grind you down, and you are going to, what are you going to cling to that's going to give you hope and purpose and meaning in the midst of this?
Mm-hmm.
And that really came out in selection, because I remember, sitting on my cot at one point and, reading through my Bible, and I had some index cards, and I still have a couple of them left over, of quotes from Jesus, take heart, I have overcome the world.
Mm-hmm.
Do not let your hearts be troubled. The Lord is my shepherd, and so those types of things. I would say that's really what happened in terms of learning of, I cannot do this by my own strength.
Mm.
I need to look to someone else and really receive grace from him in order to accomplish these things. And that was in the moment. I would not have been able to articulate that, but after selection, and then after, several years in, it's like, that was what was going on at that time. To put that maybe in theological terms, it was the law just grinding and realizing I need someone to save me from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, and then the gospel comes in of, well, Jesus has done that already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that in those moments, that was the kind of propulsion of, okay, I can make it through this next day. And then the other side of that is you look around and you see your buddies that you've kind of been training with up through that point, and you're like, I want to see them succeed as well. And so in again, kind of the theological parallel, you see that as service to your neighbor. Mm-hmm. You want them to be successful, because the success of the team, especially in that second week, if you try to Lone Ranger it or figure it all out on your own, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. You need your teammates with you.
So did the Green Berets also put you guys in specific teams?
So in selection or after?
After that, like when you serve out your time, you've got like SEAL Team 1, 2, so on and so forth.
Yes.
Do they do the same thing?
Yes.
Or similar, I should say.
So you go through the qualification course, and you're usually with a cohort. You're pretty much with them through the whole thing. I was a little different as a medic, because our medical training was longer, and so I picked up a second cohort and was with them for a year. But then once you actually graduate, and you are assigned to a group, and then you from that group, then you are assigned to a team. So mm-hmm. Yes, and the teams have different specialties. So I ended up on a team we call it's a Halo team, a military free fall team, which was used for the biggest purpose of that is actually special reconnaissance. So, we're the guys that jump out of the plane at 20,000 feet and go behind enemy lines or non-permissive environments and set up and try to, figure out how can we improve the battlefield for those who are coming behind us. Anyways.
So Halo, that's high altitude, low open?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. You guys are crazy.
Yes. I mean, that again, that gets back to the too dumb to fail, too smart to too dumb to quit, and too smart to fail.
So, so I cannot even imagine just willingly jumping out of a plane, even with a parachute. Like, what is that mental process like in terms of having to override everything that tells you don't do this?
I, I don't. I mean, so when you first go in or well, so every special forces soldier has to jump out of an airplane from this what we call static line. So that's a plane that's like 1,500 feet, 1,200 to 1,500 feet over, and you just walk off the back of the plane and the chute opens for you.
Yeah.
So the kind of the fear of like actually exiting an aircraft and that was already kind of taken care of from those static line jumps.
Okay.
So that wasn't that big a deal going into Halo school, and they put you in a wind tunnel to prepare you for like what it's actually like falling through the air.
Okay.
And there's actually there's people do this recreationally. I mean, there's some fun to be had in that.
Yeah.
So kind of those elements as I stepped off, what was my first jump? I think it was C-130. It may have, yeah. And there's an instructor there, and they've taught you everything, and so it's a real sense of, okay, if I do what I've been told to do, everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. And I say everything will be fine in the sense that I won't die.
Yeah.
Because there is always that fear. I think that's probably the biggest fear that I had was not really jumping out of the plane, not really the chute opening up or any of that. I felt like that would always work as long as, I pulled my ripcord when I needed to, and that the fear was how fast am I going to hit the ground, and what's going to happen then, because I'm a fairly big guy, and some of those landings, I look like a meteor coming down, and that's I played football, so my body can take could not now, but back then could take some hits, but it's you're coming in towards the ground upwards sometimes of 30 miles an hour, and that is not
fast.
Fun. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, I mean, I'm always. It looks like everyone is enjoying jumping out. I just, when I think about it, there's that reflex that you have that is like, don't do this. And I think that would be just screaming at me at the time. But of course, I haven't had any training, and training makes up for a lot of that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. You're not only your individual training that you would receive in that course, but then, so like I said, I was put on a team. Mm-hmm. So I had guys who had gone through this before and who had jumped, 100, 200 times even before I ever showed up to the team. And so they offered their wisdom and their encouragement as well. But yes, when you're actually in, and this is really true for everything that you do in the military, your training is meant to set you up for success. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean everybody's going to pass it, but they are the cadre, the NCOs, the sergeants, the non-commissioned officers. Their goal is actually to make you successful.
Yeah.
And part of that is because they know they're going to have to step away at some point, and they want the Army to be, and specifically Special Operations and Special Forces, to be handed over and continued on in a proper way. It's one of the what's it called? Characteristics of the Army profession is stewardship of the profession. And that's really what you're actually intending to do. So all the training and all the things that you go through are so that the Army continues to function as it has, and actually hopefully even gets better as it moves forward. So, yeah.
Okay. So translating that into the ministry, so what, how long have you been out now?
So I've been a pastor for 6 years.
Okay. So you've had time to experience things. Mm-hmm. And I guess my question is, the seminary can only do so much, right? They give us kind of the basic doctrine. I mean, that a pastor should know. Right. I'm not talking about catechism, basic doctrine. The other tools for reading the scriptures, some practical things, but how to officiate a service and do these sorts of things. But when you get out, you're kind of thrown in there, it seems. And there are some things that, I remember this. There are some things that they really couldn't teach you. You just had to experience it. So what from like your training as a Green Beret could we translate in terms of trying to cultivate both individual continual study and in facing the difficulties that you face in the ministry, but then also that kind of getting wisdom from teammates?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things, and I serve also as a chaplain, and I was leading a kind of leadership training course for some NCOs just a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about, what it means to be what it meant for me to be a Special Forces soldier. And one of the things that I told them was Special Forces soldiers, what really set them apart is that they do the basic things extremely well. Mm. When it comes to shooting, they know how to keep their sight picture. They know their trigger squeeze. They know breathing and all those fundamental basic things. They do them really well. For me as a medic, it is how to apply a tourniquet and to how to apply a pressure bandage and all these things that are really basic skills that you just do so frequently. They're ingrained into you, and you know how to react and do them at those when it's necessary and called upon. Mm-hmm. So I would say that translates into the ministry in terms of, even though with the tools that you are given in seminary, it still comes back to being in the Word of God, looking at the original languages. And I'm not saying you have to be a PhD level with those things, but being familiar enough with it to go, okay, this is what is being communicated, and to be able to just sit down with the Scripture and meditate on it and let it teach you, let God teach you through it. Yeah. And that's just a basic thing. And when you do that over and over, as the situations come up, because you're exactly right, seminary does a wonderful job to shape and mold you for how to enter into a situation, but it doesn't put you in those situations. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe perhaps on vicarage or in your field work, you'll get some experience, but even those times, those are not necessarily the people God has entrusted you with. Mm-hmm. as a pastor. When you actually have your congregation, these are the souls that God has entrusted to you. So doing those basic things is fundamental, and doing them well. Mm-hmm. And I would say that also extends to actually how you conduct a service. It sounds kind of strange, but just articulating words and making sure your speech is clear, and actually having that conviction about what you're doing in the service, mm-hmm. especially when it comes to giving the absolution or preaching, and also singing. That show that those are, again, basic things that we do as pastors, and having that conviction in doing them, mm-hmm. that this is how God has decided to work. He's called us knuckleheads into this office and said, "You teach my people, tell them who I am." Mm-hmm. And so yeah. So I think I might be getting a little upfield from your question, but
no, I think that's great. I mean, it's really important to focus on those fundamentals. I mean, this is something that I'm constantly telling my boys when we're a baseball family. That's pretty much our sport. And when things aren't going right, it's usually because they've forgotten to focus on those fundamental things, either in batting or in fielding or pitching or whatever. They've kind of gotten outside of those things and And then when you try to fix it, they say, well, that feels strange. That doesn't feel natural. I'm like, well, right, because you've been doing it wrong.
Correct.
And you have to get to the point where the fundamental thing feels natural again.
Yeah.
So there is a daily discipline to that then.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So like how many rounds would you guys shoot to get to that point where your sight picture was always on point, your trigger squeeze?
I mean, easily in the tens of thousands. And it was, and it's also, I mean, that's the other thing is, doing those fundamentals well doesn't come instantly. It has to be habituated.
Yeah.
And that's why you go out and you shoot. That was, I've compared it to other things, but one of the reasons I enjoy shooting, and I definitely enjoyed it while I was with on my teams, was you never went out and you never had a perfect round, if you will, a perfect perfect day at the range.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always those one or two flyers that it's like, what did I do that caused it to go in this direction? Or,
So there was always, it sounds like, assessment afterward.
oh yes, absolutely. And it was, and that would be another kind of thing from the Q course, from the training, is you're always being evaluated. Now they use that kind of as a threat while you're going through the qualification course, but there's actually this is not just to threaten to make sure you're doing all the things right, but it's actually so that you do your job well. You should be evaluating and going over. I mean, I do that today with my own sermons and such. Is I go back and listen to them. Oh man, I wish I had said this better there, or those types of things. But it's the same mentality on in the Army in specific events at the range. Yeah, you're always whatever the event might be, whether it's a stress shoot or we're taking out the sniper rifles and going distance with them or whatever it was. You're always evaluating, going, okay, how can I improve this and make this better for the next time? It was very much the same with medical training. It is, okay, I got all the procedures done, but how can I do them more efficiently next time? And how can I improve my aid bag? How can I improve the setup to make it more efficient for the next time?
Yeah,
things of that nature. Yeah,
and it seems like the reality is we're always engaging in habituating skills. It's just what are those skills?
Yes.
Are they skills that are actually going to help and aid in what my mission actually is, or is it going to make it worse?
Right. You're exactly right.
So Bible reading, you mentioned assessing even your preaching and teaching. One way you can do that is, as you mentioned, listening to the recordings. Do you watch videos of it? Do you watch what your hand motions are or your facial expressions without sound, and then you just listen to the sound and then put them together?
So we record our services and live stream, and so I usually just go back and watch that. Mm-hmm. I can't always make out my face. It depends on how close the camera is. Not that I really want to make out my face. I'm glad this podcast is audio.
I have a face for just audio.
Right. I'll go back and I'll watch it, and obviously I want to make sure the content is right, which usually I tend to I manuscript basically every one of my sermons, and so that keeps me in the boundaries there. Mm-hmm. But then also it's like, okay, what should be emphasized? Again, going back to the conviction, did my conviction match what I was actually saying here?
Right.
Does it actually deliver the gravity of what God is communicating through His Word there? So, it's those types of things, and then there's other another part of why I go back and listen to them is there will be often something that I'll say, and it's like, wow, that was okay, but I could take that and expand that, and it kind of gives you a different poetic that you can use the next time the text comes around or something. And yeah, so that's my assessment of it. And then I also, I mean, I very, very frequently will ask my congregation members in Bible study or meetings or whatever, what was the sermon about on Sunday? And that's another way to evaluate, am I communicating well enough to them? Am I just like working with the indigenous forces in special forces? Are they getting what I'm trying to teach them? Are they understanding this is what this means for us? And then, the kind of further with that is, do they get it so that it actually affects their lives, that it gives them the comfort that God wants them to have, that it and that it helps guide them also, that they would make good and wise decisions.
Yeah. So along the lines of cultivating the basics and having a habituated skill, sometimes we encounter, I wouldn't say physical difficulties, although kind of mental, emotional difficulties certainly affect the body. How does one prepare for that in the ministry as a habituated skill? Obviously, in the Green Berets, they, put you through a physical ringer that also taxes you mentally and then puts you into teams so that you have to either lead or follow. In what ways can that be developed so that when those times come, your expectations are calibrated correctly?
Yeah. Well, I've been, again, basics, reading scripture, praying, those types of things. And
I mean, the scriptures do throughout, right, recalibrate our expectations of, you thought this was going to be easy, but it's actually a difficult way, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So so maybe just that constant in the word, but you were going to say some other things.
Yeah. Well, and I think, because again, so even though the first week of selection was kind of an individual marker, then they put you in a team and you have to rely on other people and you have to be a good teammate. Mm-hmm. So also, we need, as pastors, especially the wisdom of other pastors. And, so, that's as simple as going to your Winkles and, and seeking the wisdom from pastors who have been in situations like this. And I have done that on numerous occasions. My former pastor, I still call him my pastor, might actually be annoyed at me because I was bothering him so much.
I bet not.
Yeah. But, seeking that wisdom from fellow pastors who have been in those situations. I've reached out to my seminary professors as well. So going to continuing education things also helps. Not only because the content usually might not be specific to a situation, but it gives you an opportunity to meet with your fellow pastors, with your brothers, and say, "Hey, this is what has been going on in the church, and I'm just not quite sure how to go forward with it." Or these are some of the things that I experienced. What were I felt like I didn't handle that well. If it comes up again, what are suggestions you guys have?
Yeah.
So there's that camaraderie, but that wisdom that can be shared from pastor to pastor and in groups of pastors.
So this has been like super helpful just to see kind of, there are times when you're trying to translate, business books on leadership or things like that into what does that look like in the ministry? And it's not always easy if you haven't been in that field to see how it translates. And so, talking with someone who's been through those things and now is using those things that they learned in a previous career and how we might incorporate those things. outside of the habituated skills, would you point to anything else that was something that you have carried forward from your life as a Green Beret or in the Army into now a pastor in the office of the ministry?
Ooh. Oh, yeah. There are probably several, and I'll just generically say, kind of routine.
Okay.
So the Army is all about good order and discipline. There are structures that are in place. There are expectations that are universally known, that are placed upon everyone. Right uniform, right place, right time. The commander is the one who's in charge. The NCOs execute what he puts forward. We have plans and operations and everything that gets put into planning. And those are all kind of routine things that help, because and I say they help because they're not always going to be the solution. One of the phrases we like to use when we were over in Iraq, this actually comes from Mike Tyson, so take that with a grain of salt. But everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and that's true. You want to have this routine, this structure, this how things are going to go, and then all of a sudden, the door gets breached, and you don't know what's on the other side. And so, but having that routine, and this goes back to training itself, allows you to be able to react and to adapt to that, and then incorporate whatever new information has come to say, okay, well, here is how we are going to move forward. I think that was helpful in coming forward, because again, and it gets down to even the most basic, on Sunday morning, there's a routine and a structure in the liturgy. And so that there's an expectation, like this is what's going to happen. And that helps build that confidence that what is going on here is the greatest thing that God gives to us. I mean, that's and so, that when those patterns are established and those things, that you're almost in a sense ready for your own death, the death of a family member, tragic loss in whatever. When the plan that you had goes out the window, you're prepared for that. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I would say that was this kind of the routine, the structure, the organizational principles in the Army that helped me to see the value of things and the way we do things in the church.
Yeah. No, this has been great. I really appreciate the time that you've given us and the insights that you've had, particularly the habituated skills. We mentioned already, you're always habituating some kind of skill, and is it the helpful one or not? And daily, intense Bible reading really is the best preparation.
Yep. Now you are I like to teach my catechumens. You are always being catechized. The question is, by what?
Yeah.
And it's the same in the Army. It's you're always being one, and this is definitely a law thing, but that's okay.
But it's good.
It's good. Yeah, it's like a day that you're not training or that you're not pushing yourself, the enemy probably is, and do you want to give them that advantage? So there's motivation to do that, and it's the same with our own Christian life. We have an enemy that just seeks to undermine all that we believe, all that God has revealed is true, and to ultimately to try to take our hope away. If we are not catechizing ourselves, habituating ourselves, being retrained, that's I love to talk about catechism as training. If we're not doing that, then are we allowing the enemy to outpace us in that?
Mm-hmm.
And will there come a day when, we get put into a position and, you pray that it doesn't happen, but that whoever says, well, no, I no longer believe my baptism saves me. No longer do I believe that that's Christ's body and blood on the altar for me. No longer do I believe that God actually loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the worst thing that can happen to a Christian.
Yeah, I've found as a pastor, not just daily Bible reading, but setting up a schedule to kind of mine what our forefathers have said, either doctrinally or in sermons, and try to make that a habit of not just relying on my own understanding of what the Bible is saying,
right?
But continually hearing anew, what did Luther say? What did Gerhard say? What did Walther say?
Yeah.
Am I understanding these things in the same manner that they understood them? Am I teaching them in the same way, with the same stuff that they taught?
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for your time. You mentioned that the importance of gathering with other pastors and hearing and learning from them. There is a conference coming up at the end of July called the Bugenhagen Conference in Racine, Wisconsin, St. John Lutheran Church and School in Racine. It is free of charge for pastors. It is Monday, July 28th through Wednesday, July 30th. And Coleman, if you're available, we'd love to have you out there. But anyone who's listening, registration is now open, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks again, Coleman.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and God's blessings to you. And
all right. You take care.
Thank you.